Yeah. So let me share with you our halakha question for today. This episode takes place at a furniture show. Multiple vendors, maybe some of them even manufacturers, coming together. It appears that in Israel, I'm not sure, they come together for an annual furniture show, and they look forward to getting a good chunk of business. And this particular vendor, Ruvain's Furniture, had a great idea for drawing people to his space. For furniture, you can imagine each person's getting a general piece of space, and they may even have been like one after the other, rows of large, sheds, storage spaces used for demonstration. And Ruvain's idea for this year is that he commissioned a huge helium balloon that had probably his picture on it. It was a picture of a man, sitting in a great lounge chair, with a big smile, and advertised the name of his firm, and with special discounts, sale time. And it's a huge, huge balloon. You can imagine those of us who maybe grew up with the Goodyear blimp, that kind of advertisement. I don't know. I'm not saying the balloon was quite that large, but it was a huge balloon that he, lifted into the place over the storage space that was designated for him. And he looked at it. It was like everything went so smoothly, and he's looking at it, and he's so proud, and he's smiling. And about a minute later, hundreds of smaller helium balloons are put into the sky, attached to strings, so they're not flying away, but they're blocking a good part of his balloon. He is so angry. He spent all this money on this huge balloon, never before seen, and some guy is blocking half of it. And he traces the guy down, who it is, and he speaks to him. And it turns out they're both Torah observant people, most likely because it was in Israel, this episode. And he lodges a complaint. He lodges a claim against this other fellow, telling him that he caused him damage. And because he caused the damage, he expects, at least the price of the balloon to be reimbursed to him by this competitor. Well, the competitor didn't agree. He said, listen, Hashemayim, Shemayim Lashem, the heavens, the skies belong to God. So obviously there were no air rights or air restrictions or permits needed to do these kind of things. There was no coordination that was involved here. And the other vendor claims that, as such, he had an equal right to launch balloons in the air. And even though they blocked a good part of Ruvain's huge balloon, he didn't feel he had any responsibility fiscally, but he agreed that he would go to a din Torah and let Rabbi Silberstein rule on what the case should be. So Rabbi Silberstein started off by referring to a Mishnah in Kilayim. Especially in Israel, there are a lot of laws that regarded to planting, and we can never graft different species together, but we also can't plant species too close to one another lest they commingle. And one of the specific restrictions is that one's not allowed to have say grain growing in the same area unless properly separated, either by a mechitza or by adequate space, as a grapevine. And so the Mishnah in Kilayim opens up by stating that if a person allowed his grapevine to extend over the wheat of his neighbor, then he has made that wheat prohibited, because once it happens, it makes the stuff like treif. And according to this viewpoint in the Mishnah. So by letting his grapevine go over, he rendered the wheat, his own grapes and the wheat, to be unusable. The halacha is not like that first opinion in the Mishnah. But Rabbi Silberstein said that this was a close enough case that, take a look, let's say the halacha did side. The reason that the halacha is not like this case is because you can't aser, you can't cause a prohibition in this manner on the other person's property. If you did it yourself, that same thing, it would have been prohibited. But you can't cause a prohibition on somebody else's property in this particular regard. But Rabbi Silberstein, well, let's say the halacha was like that. Let's use that as a paradigm to judge this balloon, because here you had one balloon and other balloons came into its space. So if we use it for a paradigm, what would that be telling us? And Rabbi Silberstein said that the cases are not really analogous. Ruvain, the furniture man's, huge balloon, and this case of someone who had his grapevine go over his neighbor's wheat is not analogous, because according to that first opinion, so the wheat is not usable at all. It's a total loss. But in this case, the fact that there were added balloons, those balloons did not damage Ruvain's balloon. The balloon itself was intact. The impact of the balloon may have been diminished because of the other balloons blocking it, but it was not a direct damage. There is a difference in halacha between direct damage and what we call grama, just an indirect cause to damage. And as a result, Rabbi Silberstein said that from the letter of the law, as can be adjudicated by human judges or a mumcha that you recognize, the expert rabbi that you go to, that by the letter of the law, the competitor who released his balloons in a way that blocked Ruvain's huge balloon cannot be held liable, because he did not cause any direct damage to the balloon. But he said it would be advisable that he try to work out an amicable resolution involving some restitution to Ruvain, because while there are many cases in Jewish law which a person cannot be found guilty in this world, doesn't mean it was right to do. And when Hashem judges us, he will find us to be guilty. And it's a lot better for us to settle those types of issues where a person is patur b'dinei adam, v'chayev b'dinei shemayim, that in the earthly court, the person, the offender, can be ruled as not having any culpability, but in the divine court, a person can be found guilty. When human beings take care of those type of debts, they're much better off and will get off much easier than if Hashem has to declare the proper consequence for that type of violation. So from the letter of the law, not responsible, but advisable to make some type of restitution, because there is some basis for the claim against that person who invaded the space. Halacha for a lot of different dimensions. Let me thank Dov Bodlander again for leading us in song. Let me wish you all a Shavua Tov.
Shavua Tov.
A good and a warm week.